You have no gift.
Well, you have no portion control. It's true! Mirabel, Mirabel, Mirabel. From the moment the Encanto fandom started doing theories, this girl has been a prime candidate for juicy discussion. Her symbolism, her development, her connections to other characters, and of course the burning debate of whether or not she actually received a gift. Heck, I'd argue that this is probably the most discussed topic of the entire movie. Okay, second most discussed, but still, people have a lot to say about this. Some people believe that she's the second coming of Candle Christ, the reincarnation of the miracle itself. And this is definitely possible due to the matching symbolism, the house being seemingly tied to her emotions, and the fact that the magic returns once she pops in that new doorknob. I gotta admit, that's some pretty convincing stuff. Some believe that she was handpicked to be the new matriarch of the family, with the exclusive ability to speak to Casita like her abuela before her.
Who can I trust to run the
Encanto
when I leave?
There are even some fans who predicted that Mirabel could have gotten a gift if she didn't wipe her hands on her dress first. Yeah, several people pointed this out to me, and it's definitely interesting to think about. Way to go, Mirabel. You could have become the next Colombian Avenger, but you just had to treat that magic like it was leftover Cheeto dust on your fingers. I hope you're proud of yourself. But I'm sure you want to know my 2 cents on the cinnamon churro. So in this video, I'll be sharing my thoughts on Mirabel's gift status and how it ties into the themes of the film. Trust me, I've been wanting to cover this topic for a long time, and it's definitely going to take a long time, so hope you got a drink or something. Keep in mind these are all just theories and predictions from my warped little mind, and if you have anything to say about Mirabel and her potential powers, feel free to leave a comment below. But for now, let's put on our glasses and try to examine whether or not our main girl suffers from gift famine. Did I really write that? Oh well, can't change it now, let's do this! So right off the bat, before anything else, let's start with my definitive answer to the question. Do I think Mirabel received a gift in Encanto? Yes and no! That wasn't definitive at all, but just give me a second to explain. In my very first Encanto video, I discussed my thoughts on the origins of the Madrigal's magic. I essentially said that the spirit of Abuela's late husband Pedro was the thing that possessed the candle, created the Encanto, and eventually gave all the children their gifts. He originally envisioned the Encanto as a place of healing, where Alma and her followers would be cut off from all pressures of the outside world, including the soldiers pursuing them and any future threats that may come about. This would allow them to focus on recovering from the physical, emotional, and mental wounds that they've just endured from losing their homes. To help them with this process, he blessed his 3 children with magical gifts specifically tailored to healing, so they can mend the wounds of the past, come together to share pain in the present, and be prepared for any unfortunate events in the future. He hoped that once Alma herself was healed, she could then aid in the recovery of her many friends and followers. Eventually, they'd adopt coping skills, so they would have to rely on the gifts less and less, making them stronger, better prepared, and maybe even willing to leave the Encanto and see the world when they're ready. So, how did everything turn out in the end? Oops. Yeah, unfortunately, Pedro's plan completely fell apart at the seams. The family misinterpreted what his gifts were initially for, they started seeing themselves solely as gifts instead of as actual people, they continuously swept all negative occurrences under the rug, future generations were burdened with high expectations, and Alma, who was supposed to be the first one to heal, remained emotionally distant from everyone and kept her pain locked up for years. Pedro knew that this family was falling apart, and something new needed to be done to fix it. And that is where our little miracle Mirabel comes in. Initially, Pedro ensured that Mirabel did not receive a gift, and he did this for a reason, to give her the exclusive perspective of an outsider looking in. As shown in the film, everyone else in the Madrigal family is constantly pressured by Abuela to use their gifts for the greater good. Luisa uses her strength to hold the town together. Julieta's always handing out her superfoods to the masses. Isabela is always compelled to be the perfect Disney princess. Heck, I'm sure Abuela probably even wrote her certain songs to sing in her off time. And this constant pressure to provide and nurture and keep up appearances has essentially forced everyone into a life where the only thing that matters is the next mountain they have to move, or the next flower they have to grow, or the next thing they have to do to further cement themselves into the roles that Abuela has forced them into. Basically, they're always looking forward and never looking around. But Mirabel was gonna be different. Without any sort of superpower, she would never be subjected to the same kind of pressure. This would make her much more perceptive, open-minded, and capable of noticing things that the other members of her family simply couldn't. And her role as the odd one out would naturally put her in many situations where she would be alone or excluded from certain events. Heck, I know a lot of people like to think that Mirabel is the only person besides Abuela Alma who can speak to Casita, but I think it's more of a case of everybody else being so preoccupied with preserving their roles that Mirabel is the only one who really has time to speak to Casita, resulting in them becoming besties. Anyway, I like to think that Pedro knew all of this and essentially created a plan where he would send Mirabel a secret message when she was old enough. You know, like some kind of omen or offering that could point her in the right direction, or at least give her incentive to start looking for what's wrong with the family. He was still very much in control of the magic at this point, so this would be easy to do. But on the same day that Mirabel did not receive her gift, something terrible happens. Bruno, so stricken with fear and self-doubt from his family's treatment, leaves his room and the family for good. This is a huge emotional blow for Pedro. I mean, it was enough to see his son be mislabeled as hurtful and uncaring towards his family, but to have him be so mistreated that he has no choice but to leave and he can't do a thing about it? This is downright heartbreaking for him. In fact, this cuts him so deep that something never before seen begins to happen. Cracks in the casita begin to form. Now try to stay with me here. I believe that the cracks in the casita are the direct result of Pedro's emotional grieving. If his spirit is the source of the magic, like I predicted, it would mean that he created Casita and the Encanto with said magic and is essentially tied to both of them in a way. Heck, his candle is literally in the center of the house, which is basically the center of the whole Encanto. Kind of like he's the beating heart of this whole operation. So when he has moments of emotional weakness, it would make sense for the magic to begin fading and for the things he created with it to start falling apart. He was probably able to hold it together for a while. I mean, he definitely struck me as a man who can stay calm in a crisis, but seeing his son be cast out of the family, on top of all the years he's already suffered, was the straw that snapped the camel in half. He has finally reached his breaking point, and it's starting to show with cracks in the casita. So yes, this would mean that cracks have been forming around the house for about 10 years before that scene in the movie. How did the family never notice this? Well, I imagine that the cracks started off very small since Pedro was only starting to emotionally break. And as we already established, the family is always preoccupied with their own stuff, so they likely wouldn't notice something that small. And honestly, the cracks probably wouldn't have lasted long anyway, since we know that Bruno, the angel that he is, has been patching things up behind the scenes. We're never given a time frame for how long he's been doing this, but it's possible that he's been filling cracks ever since he first started living there. So now that Pedro doesn't have to worry about his family freaking out from the cracks, he can focus on his plan of sending Mirabel a message to start her on her quest. He's already using the majority of his strength just to hold everything together, so it can't be anything major anymore. And after a bit of thinking, he comes up with the perfect idea. The cracks themselves will be the message he sends to her. Simple, straightforward, and in his state, extremely easy to do. Now all he needs is the perfect moment. Pedro eventually hears that Pepa and Felix are going to be trying for a new child. And this is perfect. A gifting ceremony will dominate everyone's attention, and he's basically guaranteed to catch Mirabel in a moment alone since she's always an outcast at these kinds of events. So when Antonio comes of age, Pedro basically gives him the gift that he knows would make him happy. No healing, no extra intentions like the other ones, just a nice gift from Grandpa. Everyone in the family breathes a sigh of relief, and they hold the traditional festivities in the new room. Mirabel gets left out like always, she sings her big showstopper, and once she's all by herself, Pedro finally gives her his message. I like to see this whole scene of the house cracking around Mirabel as Pedro just having a full emotional breakdown in front of his granddaughter. He's basically crying out to her that this household is falling apart, this family is falling apart, he's falling apart after having to watch this day after day, year after year, and she's the only one who can repair this broken home. Mirabel obviously doesn't get this exact message, but it is more than enough to imply that something is definitely wrong. And while you might think this is risky since the rest of the family could easily see it, Pedro already knows that Bruno could easily patch up the cracks, and very quickly too, which is why when Mirabel tries to show Alma what she's seen, boom, not a fracture in sight. By the way, can we just talk about that real quick? How the heck did Bruno patch up all of that in the few minutes it took Mirabel to go and get her family? Did he train rats around the house to apply spackle at a moment's notice? Jeez, forget future vision. This guy's gift is home improvement. Give him a TV spot and he'd make a fortune. Coming up next, watch as Jorge helps you fix your ceilings and floor haze on Casita Fantastica. But first, romance is spawning in a broken rat family. Find out what happens on Forbidden Love. I love you too, but I'm secretly your aunt. Aw, man. So with her message received, Mirabel goes off on her quest to try and fix the magic. But behind the scenes, Pedro isn't doing so hot. After finally breaking down that one night in front of Mirabel, he has just been getting worse and worse. You know when you finally let your emotions fly after a long time of keeping them in, and basically all of your demons come out in one fell swoop? Well, that's exactly what happens to Pedro here. Decades and decades of held back emotional pain, plus the current drama he's experiencing in front of him, plus the fact that he has no one to comfort him or even talk to him, means that this guy is just left to grieve all by himself. This leads to cracks forming throughout the house that even Bruno can't patch up in time. And as we see in the movie, the rest of the family sees them and starts to panic, which just makes Pedro stress out even more. He does his best to hold it together while Mirabel figures everything out. He's pretty much hanging by a thread by the very end. And when she finally hits the nail on the head in front of her whole family, he finally lets it all go, which leads to the house collapsing. Once he sees that his entire family is safe, now knowing that they all have the realization that they've needed for years, Pedro breathes one last sigh of relief, and his spirit officially leaves the candle. So what happens next? Well, this is where the yes part of my theory comes in. Once again, like I said in my original video, when Pedro's spirit left the candle, I imagine that he got reincarnated as a butterfly. The same one that flew onto that blade of grass while Alma and Mirabel were having their little heart-to-heart. He was there watching and listening as they began the healing process that he had waited for them to start for so long. And at this very moment, when Mirabel has proven that she has the courage, wit, and determination to hold the family together in a crisis situation, is when Pedro officially passes the family's magic down to her. And dang does he do it in a flashy fashion. Look at how all these butterflies swirl around the two of them. In the end, they rebuild the house, Mirabel installs the knob, and because she's the new keeper of the magic, everything gets fully restored to its rightful state. Except now there's no candle, and all the rooms have been completely reset. Probably for the best, because with all the new development that these guys have had throughout the film, they should definitely have rooms that better reflect their brand new selves. So the family finally reunites, Mirabel and Alma encourage everyone to be more open about their feelings so they can actually heal this time, and Pedro in his new butterfly form... Oops. In his new butterfly form can forever watch over his wonderful family and even follow them if they ever decide to leave the Encanto and go see the world. But that's a topic for another video. So yeah, I'm sure there were a few moments in there where you were thinking, dude, you're stretching it just a little thin there, bud. But overall, I really do like the idea that Mirabel started off as a giftless child, and once she proved herself to be capable, responsible, and fully dedicated to saving her family, Pedro left the magic in her capable hands, and with the stress off his shoulders, he can now take his own time to emotionally relax. It really does feel like everything comes full circle when you think about it this way. But what do you guys think? Did Mirabel earn her gift through Abuelo's trials and tribulations, or was it something else entirely? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, because next time I'll be doing a part 2 to this video, where instead of discussing Mirabel's gift in the movie, I'm gonna try and craft an alternate scenario where Mirabel gets a normal gift just like everyone else, with a special room to match. You guys really seem to like my video where I designed rooms for the Madrigals, so it'll be fun to do that kind of creative thinking again. But for now, thanks for tuning in everybody, and I hope to see you all real soon.